This channel is supported by Truefire.
Well, what is this all about then? It's the Truefire Summer Music Festival. What I'm going to tell you about, you can get 1 month of All Access for just $1. The All Access, you can dip in and out of every single course on Truefire, so that's a really great way to get some awesome courses down you.
Sure, you've seen me talk about this guitar plenty, but I was kind of interested and inspired to kind of get it back out again and have a little bit more of a chat around it, because I was reading an article about, you know, what it is that Nacho does, as well as JD Simo has been sent a Nacho, I presume, by Nacho, and has been, you know, he's been really singing its praises. My buddy Jake Loosemore, who I kind of got into this whole Nacho rabbit hole because of, sent me like a lot of his Instagram stuff, which he's been playing this Nacho, and he's kind of even said like it's turned to his #1, and he said like, if you know sort of my background, you know I don't say that sort of thing lightly. I think it's kind of an interesting thing to me, because of all of the sort of relic type things that are out there, you know, Hyperside and all of that sort of stuff, it seems to me that the Nacho is the thing that even the vintage guitar kind of experts and purists seem to get on board with out of all of this stuff. I think Jed plays a Nacho quite a lot now, the Jed Hughes chap. There are people like Billy Gibbons, I think is one of Nacho's sort of like the biggest customer. Julian Lage has a vintage guitar as well, a vintage Blackguard. I think he now plays 2 Nachos on the road. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense to travel with a vintage instrument. Just in terms of finances, I guess jazz musicians in general are not going to have tons of money to spare if they do lose their Blackguard. just here plugged into a Deluxe Reverb reissue on the Vibrato channel with the volume at about 2. I spoke to Nacho on the phone around some ideas. I kind of asked him, like, if you're into this authenticity stuff, what is this middle position about? I think Blackguard guitars would have had a few different circuits and stuff, but this one where they're kind of wired as a humbucker is actually not particularly vintage correct. And what he said was, well, actually it kind of just works really well for home volumes. And I think he's right. Like, if you listen, because this amp is not exactly cranked, and the bridge, the middle position humbucking, what I think Nacho has going for it, like, as a concept, is that you marry an idea of, like, slightly more one-off type instruments with a bit more of a story. I think that is really what we're looking for in this kind of thing. Is it about, like, the materials used? Is it about value for money? Not really, and none of it's about that. I think it's about, like, an idea of a guitar, but it has to, like, actually resonate with you as a player is kind of the point. But, like, the idea is that you've kind of got the story kind of built in because you're building off of CNC models that Nacho himself does of actual Blackguard instruments, and then relicing, which I think when you look at what other people in the space do, does stand up as, I think, the best that there is out there. And maybe, you know, there are other manufacturers or boutique guys doing really good relics too, but I think, to me, I've not seen stuff that looks quite as good as this in general, quite as consistently. And, like, the exact opposite to me is like the Fender Road Worn kind of stencil thing, where it's like, well, that kind of just shows that all of the guitars had the same story. It kind of breaks the idea of the relic a little bit. But it's really interesting to me because I know that Ed he's got a podcast with Hugh Price as well. He has a few vintage guitars and he really rates his Nacho. I've actually heard from a few people that have vintage guitars and they end up playing them, you know, out, and some of them end up, you know, liking them as much, if not more than some of their vintage pieces. Of course, like with vintage guitars, there's a lot of, you know, thought around there that some of that stuff might be like a bit cork sniffery as well. Obviously, these are not, you know, your classic run-of-the-mill type guitars, and whether you decide there's any actual value in this sort of stuff when you can get great guitars for like £300, I think is entirely down to you, your financial circumstances, and whether you've got enough money to buy a yacht or not. But yeah, the reason that the prices are expensive is because he doesn't make tons of them. I think less than 100 a year is what it says in an article that I found back in the day. I think it's, yeah, quite small numbers, but you're actually seeing there's a few like batches of them that have come out recently, like on guitarpoint.de and some others. It's just, you can get them at certain times a year, and if not, you can get on a wait list if you're looking for this sort of thing. For me, the V-neck is a wonderful thing to behold, and it makes the guitar feel and play a really interesting way. But long term, if I want a number one Tele, I've decided really that for me the V-neck is not necessarily going to work for me in the long term. So yeah, it's a guitar that I kind of have to use on special occasions really. But that's fine. I think it sounds pretty good to me. It sounded different to any other Teles that I had at the time, and it still does. Yeah, so I don't know, it keeps it a bit under wraps, whoever's doing these pickups, and builds machines quite a lot of these parts. Southern Ash, yeah, he's doing the thing the right way. You know, let me know your thoughts in the comments of whether it's totally bunk or not. I'd love to know your thoughts. Cheers for stopping by. Have a good Sunday.